Hey, hey, hey. Happy Wednesday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, incredibly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. This is live stream 1138. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out, super casual around here. We just hang out talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news, and then I will usually pontificate about a topic related to our hobby, which I shall be doing tonight, because tonight I'm going to ponder if you are the problem in tabletop role-playing games. But we're going to talk about the news first. So, of course, it'll be a little bit, maybe about a half hour before we get into that topic. And, of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And then, of course, because this is a live show, there is chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. And you must be a subscriber to the channel in order to take part. Gotta be a subscriber for at least 10 minutes. Another way I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you check both those boxes, you want to say howdy, maybe you got a question, a comment, by all means, chime in, and I will do my absolute best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Sean O'Donnell. Glenwood RX is with us, as is Bradley Thorpe and Semper Buffo, as well as our good friend of the show, the Madman. And I would not be surprised if the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D is lurking in the shadows, yet another of our chat moderators alongside the Madman. So, got a big show tonight. Very big show. Got a topic. I don't want to say that I've got like a burr in my ass about, but I am a little irritated. So we are going to tackle that. It's just something that it drives me nuts. And we are going to kind of delve a little bit deeper into it, because there are a lot of folks out there who right now are essentially saying people who play role-playing games, people like myself, people like yourselves, we are the problem in the hobby. So we're going to discuss that a little bit later. And Steven from Roll for Combat's popping on in. It's been a while since we've seen Steven. So, well, we know Steven hasn't been sharing any of my video reviews for any of the Battle Zoo releases that I've reviewed. Honestly, it's something I wonder about, because I'm like, yeah, I've shared some video reviews of some of the Battle Zoo stuff that Steven shared, and he has never, to my knowledge, ever shared it with his followers. It's like, okay, all righty. Kathy Evans and Richard Harris are also popping on in. Very cool. Steven says, oops, sorry, I'll put him in the new newsletter. Oh, you don't have to do anything. I'm just giving you a hard time. But I do find it to be a little bizarre when I share a positive review of something and then the publisher who sent me the review copy doesn't pick up on it, even if, I send an email out saying, oh, hey, review's up. And it's like, okay. All right. Okay. Coco B is with us, says they just show up and they're told they're a problem. It's just like at home. Sweet. All right. So we're going to dive on into the tabletop news of the day, because currently up on GMT Games P500 list is the Thunderverse Track Pack. Here's the skinny. The Thunderverse, home of Thunder Alley, Grand Prix, and the wilder little brother Apocalypse Road. Each game has its own rhythm and sensibilities, but each needs specific tracks upon which to compete. Over time, these tracks become the comfortable playgrounds in the stories, but eventually players will seek out and desire new challenges and changing backgrounds. First, there was the Thunder Alley Track Pack, and it introduced dirt racing and a few legendary multi-purpose tracks. Then new tracks were created focused on Grand Prix. Now there is the first track pack designed with the entire Thunder Alley Racing series, known by the designer as the Thunderverse, in mind. No matter what your preferred game, this expansion has something for you. Now, of course, you want to keep in mind that these are just previews of the tracks. These are not the final versions of the tracks, because this is just a P500 at the moment. But we get 4 new tracks. So we get Charlotte, a classic oval, perfect for Thunder Alley, but with a few changes and an infield course that's designed to challenge Grand Prix drivers as well. There is Chicago. Not only is this a grueling road course setup to challenge Grand Prix and Thunder Alley fans, but they also snuck in an Apocalypse Road course in the otherwise unused corners of the course. Chicago invites everyone to compete. There's Montreal. Montreal is primarily a Grand Prix course, but it does make a nice alternate for Thunder Alley. In fact, they've tried to even squeeze an Apocalypse Road track into the infield area. Yeah, but it was not a fun course and not at all an attractive look. And then there is Stowe Circuit, which was designed specifically as an Apocalypse Road track, but the tight footprint allowed for an easy addition of a Thunder Alley / Grand Prix course around the outside. Hey, sometimes things just work out perfectly. Right now, you can reserve a copy of the Thunderverse Track Pack for $19. It's going to eventually carry an MSRP of $28. And if you have followed the Gaming Gang for quite some time, you know I have actually reviewed all 3 of the Thunderverse games, and they are excellent. In fact, I got to say, in my opinion, Thunder Alley is probably the best NASCAR game out there. It is really good. Really, really well done. And it's one of these games where it's not, because I know some of the board games out there that kind of have like a stock car theme to them. Every player gets a car. So you might have 4 cars racing around the track. That doesn't feel very realistic. That's not the case with the Thunderverse. Not at all. Very cool. GameCat is joining us in chat, as has Kevin King. Welcome to you both. Moving right along, Kobold Press has launched their Kickstarter to fund the Tales of the Valiant Monster Vault 2. Here's what I know. More than 300 all-new monsters, including dangerous demons and horrifying new undead. This will be the monster book your players fear. Deadly monsters and strange fae populate Monster Vault 2, an all-new volume of creatures for your tabletop Tales of the Valiant and Dungeons & Dragons games. Bring on the Fae Lord of Light, the demon prince of the river Styx, new undead like the Unflamed, and strange visitors from elemental and infernal realms. Monster Vault 2 contains over 300 new monsters, exactly as you might expect, but there's also something new. It's called Monster Bundles. Unexpected. These bundles gather groups of related monsters that work together well, like frost giants and winter wolves, using the encounter builder math for well-balanced drag and drop monsters every time. These bundles are scaled in advance. No matter what tier of play your game is in, all bundles will have something for your table. And of course, there is a short Kickstarter video, which, if I remember correctly, I have not set up. So we're going to skip on past that. Come on, you already got what you need. I explained it all to you. So this Kickstarter project launched yesterday. And last I looked this afternoon, it was already past the $140,000 mark, which is actually just beyond 200% funded, because it had like I think it was like a $70,000 goal. But regardless, it hit it, and it is well past it. You can reserve a copy of the hardcover with PDF for a $59 pledge, or you can grab just the PDF for a $29 pledge through February 6th. Expected delivery on both the physical and digital items will be August of 2025. So we will see that this summer. I would not be surprised if Kobold Press shoots for a Gen Con release as far as the Monster Vault 2. Sweet, very nice. Always happy to see some new Tales of the Valiant releases out there. I am going to share a Why You Should Play video sometime this month about Tales of the Valiant. That will be the focus of that. So stay tuned. I'm going to talk about, if you really don't want to play D&D, but you want to play D&D, we're going to talk about it. Zorak Zoran 1 is popping on in, and James Mitchell is also with us in chat. I think I've said hello to everyone so far. Moving right along, there's a new bundle of holding. In fact, there's a few bundles of holding which have landed. Let's talk about one of them. It features the Japanese themed Fabula Ultima. That was weird. There we go. From Need Games. I've got the deets on the deal. Adventure. This all-new Fabula Ultima bundle presents, you guessed it, Fabula Ultima, the Need Games tabletop role-playing game inspired by Japanese-style console RPGs, or otherwise known as JRPGs. In Fabula Ultima, you and your friends tell epic stories of would-be heroes and fearsome villains, set in fantasy worlds filled with magic, wondrous locations, and uniquely bizarre monsters. Your group can freely shape the world in any of several styles: high fantasy, natural fantasy, and techno fantasy. You must have some really nice dance floors in the techno fantasy setting. Developed kingdoms, peoples, histories, villains, clashing factions, world-shattering perils, and extraordinary heroes of many shapes and sizes. Mix and match 15 video game-inspired character classes: arcanists, shapeshifters, battle mages, paladins, scholars, explorers, tinkerers, weapon masters, even death knights, to create your ideal character. The Game Master gets all the tools needed to create your hero's dark mirrors, the villains. Make a choice and fight for what you believe in. For just $14.95, you'll get all 4 titles in this Fabula Ultima collection, the retail value of $58, as DRM-free PDFs, including the complete 360-page full-color Fabula Ultima core rulebook, the Atlas Techno Fantasy and Atlas High Fantasy source books, as well as the GM's Toolkit. These savings will run through January 20th. So I have heard good things about Fabula Ultima. It's not really my bag of tricks, seeing that I don't really play Japanese role-playing games as far as, video games and stuff like that. Okay, yes, I have played some Final Fantasy over the years. That's about it. But still, I have heard very good things. I have heard that this is a really nicely presented role-playing game. So if you are into JRPGs, this is probably certainly worth a look. All right, moving right along. Arriving later this year is the eagerly anticipated Legend in the Mist role-playing game from Son of Oak Game Studio. Here's the scoop. Everything you need to create and play Legend in the Mist. Inspired by the likes of The Lord of the Rings, Princess Mononoke, and Wheel of Time, Legend in the Mist sees players embarking on perilous journeys over majestic landscapes, unearthing the forgotten glories and horrors of the past. The book provides all the ingredients necessary to tell such great tales: monsters, magic, mystery, and unforgettable moments, using the innovative keyword-based system in which all actions are possible with one simple yet highly customizable role. The tale of your character evolves as they make tough choices when their hopes and beliefs are fully tested, rising from humble beginnings to greater glories. The Legend in the Mist core book contains the complete tabletop role-playing game, including a play-along introduction to the rules, instructions and advice for the Master of Ceremonies, the MC, that's the game master in the City of Mist line of games, or I guess I'll say Mist line of games, ready-made tropes for a quick character creation, suggestions for storylines and challenges, a myriad of monsters to face, journeys to traverse, and obstacles to overcome, rules for single-player and two-player games, as well as a ready-made starter adventure. Right now, you can pre-order the core book for $39.95. It's going to eventually carry an MSRP of $44.95. Now, if you want just the PDF alone, you can also pre-order that for $19.95. And I do believe the core book is expected to ship in June. I think the PDF's coming out a little bit before that. I think it's I thought I saw April, May-ish. But as far as the book itself, they are looking for June. And interestingly enough, EN World had a poll, which I had to be honest, I don't necessarily put a ton of faith in, because anytime you have a poll, people can game the system. But they had the most anticipated tabletop role-playing game of 2025, and this won. This came in first. This is the role-playing game that is the most anticipated by those polled by EN World. I thought that was kind of interesting, because the reality is this didn't make my list of most anticipated role-playing games. One of the reasons is because I know very little about it. I get it. I understand it uses the same mechanics as City of Mist. So there is that. And it is a rustic fantasy setting. But that's about it. But I got to say, this looks interesting. Could be kind of cool. I do understand City of Mist is not for everyone. I reviewed the slipcase set for City of Mist. I thought it was really cool. It's very different, and it's keyword based. So James Mitchell says they're really enjoying the City of Mist system if you want rules light. And funny enough, City of Mist reminds me a little bit about like the Apocalypse engine, because I think it does share some DNA with it, but it's probably a little easier for game masters to come up with like the pass fail than sometimes with the Apocalypse engine. Because I know that throws people a lot, especially coming up with moves for the Apocalypse engine. So once again, Legend in the Mist. This is the core rule book. We're actually going to talk about the setting book on tomorrow's show, which is also available for pre-order too. Final news piece of the evening out in PDF right now is the Monstrous Manual for Acts 2. I've got the lowdown from Autarch LLC. Enter a world where emperors... why am I stumbling over everything today? It's been an odd day. Odd day. Anyway, enter a world where empires stand on the brink of war and terrible monsters tear at the fragile borderlands of men, where decaying cities teem with chaos and corruption. Weeping innocents are sacrificed to chthonic cults, and nobles live in decadent pleasure while the realm burns. Where heroes, wizards, and rogues risk everything in pursuit of glory, fortune, and power. This is a world where adventurers can become conquerors, and conquerors can become kings. Will you survive the perils of war and dark magic to claim a throne? Or will you meet your fate in a forgotten ruin beyond the ken of man? The Adventure Conqueror King System Imperial Imprint, say that 5 times fast, is the new edition of the acclaimed best-selling fantasy role-playing game. Built on more than 12 years of playtesting and hundreds of hours of methodical research and development, Acts 2 is a 3-volume D20 fantasy role-playing game that offers everything you need to run epic fantasy campaigns with a sweeping scope. This book, The Monstrous Manual, is a 432-page compendium of creatures found in the worlds of Acts 2. To make The Monstrous Manual a bestiary like no other, they've returned to the primordial source material of myth and legend and recreated all the classic fantasy creatures from the ground up. In this book, you'll get more than 290 monster entries, each featuring a full-page description of the creature's game statistics, combat abilities, habitat, reproduction, and spoils. Monster creation rules that reveal how to create your own Acts 2 monsters using the same mechanics the designers would. Monster taming and training systems that take into account monster intelligence and attitude, training complexity, and more. Monstrous henchmen rules that let you level up your monstrous companions into fearsome sidekicks and allies. Monster part mechanics that let adventurers collect furs, ivory, even magical components from slain monsters. In-character commentary and lore from the sages and explorers of the Oran Empire campaign setting, and much, much more. Whether you expect your adventurers to fight monsters or breed them, the Acts 2 Monstrous Manual is the bestiary of fantasy creatures you need. Now, the print edition isn't out yet, but the PDF certainly is, and it can be had over at DriveThruRPG for $20. And of course, in case my best friend Elliot Miller happens to watch this after the stream ends, he usually catches shows a few days later, I made sure to include a giant spider because he just loves those spiders. Not. All right, so there you have the news for tonight. Of course, I've mentioned DriveThruRPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you're going to go visit DriveThruRPG, Storytellers Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, what have you, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Of course, if you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always stop on by paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Lovely. And I want to thank some folks who have recently stopped on by paypal.me/thegaminggang and made not small donations. Big thank you to Kevin King, Agile Monk, and the Madman. Tip of the cap to all of you out there who use those banner ads and or stop by paypal.me, the Gaming Gang. All right, let's see. Chris Lundgren is popping on in. He's with his cockatiel buddy. Good to see you. Sean O'Donnell says, in a time of stuff like Call of Duty, I'm going to guess that's, it says Call of Duty being highly anticipated. It doesn't shock them when mainstream doesn't reflect their own tastes. Kevin King says the art style and layout reminded them of the original AD&D Monstrous Manual. Wasn't that for 2E? Isn't the Monstrous Manual for Dungeons and Dragons? That was 2nd edition, right? Because remember, by then I was gone. I was not playing D&D at all. So, but I do remember the monster book being called the Monstrous Manual, but I think that was 2nd edition. I could be wrong. I don't know. All righty then. So tonight we're going to talk about if you are the problem with the tabletop role-playing game hobby in just a few moments. But yeah, first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Like rower said, rower.
Frosty, man, frosty.
When you say chunky, you've said a mouthful. When you say chunky, you've said a mouthful. Chunky, delicious milk chocolate. A thick, thick chunk of chocolate you can really sink your teeth into. Remember, when you say chunky, you've said a mouthful. Delicious.
Wilkins decaffeinated coffee is best at any price.
Oh, you just say that because...
Because what?
Because it's true. When you were a child, did they warn you about the boogeyman? The boogeyman. He hurt bad children and did terrible things to their mommies. But you can't kill the boogeyman. Now, the most terrifying nightmare of childhood returns. The boogeyman. The boogeyman. He's going to get you. And you. And you.
You're not going to scare me.
Had its own power.
The boogeyman. You can't hide from him. By the time they believe in him, it'll be too late. The boogeyman, he's going to get you.
Obviously, they spent 20, maybe $40 on these special effects for the boogeyman. I was trying to figure out, okay, so it's supposed to be a supernatural entity of some sort, right? Why would they need to tie the girl's feet together? Okay, whatever. Of course, Lundgren says 40 cents. Gleeman RX says, wait, this isn't Amityville? I know, they used the house. That was the house from the Amityville Horror, at least the film. So, yes, Kevin King says 1980. What a surprise. Bradley Thorpe says, hey, Jeff, I wanted to ask you if you've reviewed Dungeons & Dragons Worlds and Realms. It's a massive book. It's an encyclopedia on all the realms of D&D, even the multiverse. I have not. I've never seen it, to be honest. Kevin King says, Doctor Who called. They want their special effects team back. Oh, come on. Even the 70s Doctor Who episodes had a little bit better special effects than that. Although it used to drive me nuts when they'd have somebody close their eyes and they would paint eyes on their eyelids. They did that way too much. All right, so tonight, I wanted to talk about if you are the problem with the tabletop role-playing game hobby, because there are folks out there who are claiming we are. Chris Lindgren says they picked it up. It's an amazing book, the Worlds and Realms. Got theirs at Target, worth every penny. So Gleeman RX says Amazon says Worlds and Realms was released on in October, 368 pages. So is that officially from Wizards of the Coast, or is that third party? I'd assume it's Wizards of the Coast, seeing that it's available at Target. I don't know. And, we talked about this before. I don't have the problem with Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast has the problem with me. They don't like me sharing my honest opinions on their releases. So it's like, okay. All right. Okay. So anyway, there are folks out there who have been for quite some time, and once again, it's recently reared its head, trying to tell people out there in the hobby that if you are not playing, and essentially it's Dungeons and Dragons, but kind of goes for everybody else too. If you have certain things in your role-playing games at your table, then you're playing wrong, and you should not be welcome in the hobby. It's like, zoinks, what? So I'll give you a great example. And I'm not going to like call out specific individuals. If you follow the hobby, you already know who some of these people, chirping about happen to be. But recently, someone was talking about how if you include anything that alludes to colonialism in your role-playing game world, around your game table, then you don't belong in the hobby. It's like, okay, Vorpal Bite says they call me white colonist male, telling me I am the problem. I find it really weird that a lot of these people who have claimed all this gatekeeping went on in the 70s and 80s. Back when just everyone was clamoring to play role-playing games because those of us who were involved in the hobby and having a really good time were just so cool. We had to turn away people at the door. The same ones who claim all this gatekeeping took place, which I'm sure gatekeeping took place. I've never said it didn't. I never personally saw it. And most people that I know in the hobby at that point in time, we would have invited anybody to sit down at our table and play. The more the merrier. But there are these folks out there who claim that there was just rampant gatekeeping, then turn around and gatekeep. What is that? I just don't get it. And it's always these people talking about how if you do this at your game table, which is your own business, right? Now, I say it all the time. As long as nobody gets an eye poked out, everybody's having a good time, nobody's feelings are hurt, it's your game table. You play what you want. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I would want to play what you're running, but it's your business. And it isn't as if, oh my gosh, we were playing in this fantasy role-playing game where we were the heroes and we were defeating slavers. And once we were done playing that game, I walked out and I thought to myself, well, you know what? I think I'm going to go buy myself a human being. But once again, there are those out there saying, hey, if you include any sort of civilization or empire that incorporates slavery, even when they're the villains that you're fighting against, well, God damn it, you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever fantasy role-playing game or any role-playing game at your table wrong. And not only that, you don't belong in this hobby. That's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. And it is gatekeeping at its core level. How could you not think that? And I've had people email me and ask, why is it anybody's business what I do at my game table with my players who have no problem with it? And a lot of times it's like, oh, these woke folks, like woke of the coast and stuff like that. It's not necessarily liberals. And I know there are some of you out there who will think, oh, it's all you lefties out there. No, it's not. I'll give you a great example. I follow Tim Kask on Facebook. And Tim Kask is part of the last of the remaining old guard for D&D. And he is very, very liberal with his posts, which I like a ton. And I usually give him a like with a lot of his stuff. I'll tell you what, I guarantee Tim Kask isn't sitting at his game table with an X card and have all of his players fill out these various different forms to let them know if a giant spider is introduced in the adventure, are they going to freak out? I guarantee you Tim Kask isn't doing that. Yet Tim Kask is very, very liberal. So it's not liberals doing that. It's fucking idiots is what it is. So I have people ask me all the time where it's like, why do they do this? And from what I have seen, normally these people have something to sell. So a lot of times they've got their own TTRPG PDFs or Kickstarters for physical books and things like that. And for the most part, they normally boil down to how to be a better game master. A lot of their material that they publish is how to be a better, actually, I should point out, not necessarily game master, dungeon master. So a lot of this is tied into their pocket because Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know if Stephen from Roll for Combat's still hanging around. He'll probably be able to clue us in a bit better on this. I honestly don't know how popular it is right now. This new 5.5 of D&D, the new edition that's not a new edition, but it is a new edition of Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. I have no idea. I've already pointed out before, I've been kicking it around. Do I pick up the Dungeon Master's Guide so I can share a review of it? Or it's not like, oh my gosh, I got to get this or anything like that. And I think that's how a lot of people feel at the moment. Is it's not critical to be adding it to their collection. Random Guy is with us. Good to see you. Said, it's weird calling yourself a D&D fan when you haven't read the player's handbook, let alone the Dungeon Master playback for any edition. These are the weird leftoids that preach the most. I have absolutely no issue with trying to make a role-playing game as open and welcoming to as many people as you can. I mean, I don't have any problem with that at all. In fact, I've got some reviews coming up for role-playing games that I am going to give very positive review scores to because I like them quite a bit. That some of you out there who watch these videos will probably be like, oh, no, I wouldn't do, no, that's not for me, which is fine because every role-playing game doesn't have to be for everyone. But the concept to try to sit there and tell people that you're playing a pretend game wrong simply because you might include concepts that they don't like, which, I mean, let's be honest. I've mentioned this before. Hey, yeah, slavery is an abomination. This country tore itself apart over slavery. And don't give me the bullshit about states' rights, because the states' rights were the right to own people. That was the state right that they were concerned about. I know a lot about the American Civil War, so I hate when people are like, no, it was states' rights. No, bullshit. The only state right that the Confederacy cared about was keeping their slaves. That was it. But slavery still exists to this day. It's going on right now. So if you're sitting there and you're going to be like, oh, well, in my role-playing game, we don't want anything that actually still exists in the real world. To me, that's moronic. I mean, granted, I'm not saying that you got to sit there and base your entire role-playing campaign about the colonization of another nation and the subjugation of another people. I'm not saying that at all. But to sit there and try to ignore that this is something that is part of human history is goofy. It is just asinine. And I think part of it comes down to the fact that a lot of these people know absolutely nothing about history. They probably know more about the history of Faerun than they do about Europe. No joke. So it just bugs the shit out of me when people try to tell you. It's one thing for people to disagree with the sort of game you run at your table. That's fine. But for people to sit there and say, oh, well, if you're not doing it this way, if you're not doing it my way, if you're including concepts that I don't like in your game, then you should get the fuck out of this hobby. I've got a beef with that. Coco B says, oh, I'm building a Hyborian campaign. Oh, man, that's it. How dare you? Get out of this hobby, Coco B. Better make sure all my smart stuffs is turned off when I run it, or the problem police will be at my door. I like that. The problem police. Chris Lundgren points out most Europeans know American history better than most people born in the U.S. That is very, very true. Random guy says slavery is just a concept in a game. It's not the main aspect. It's just a subject. For example, some orcs took humans as slaves and you need to save them. Great storyline. I agree. Look at classic fantasy stories. Come on. And I'm not talking about, see, part of the problem too is that a lot of these people whinging about what goes on at your game table, that it's not as if you're like, oh, let me make sure I go on to the Wizards of the Coast forums, every single one, and talk about my game campaign. It's, man, I don't know. It just really irritates me because I'm sorry, Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games, if back in 1974, if Gary Gygax and the Blooms and other folks involved, like Dave Arneson, involved early on in Dungeons and Dragons, had promoted the game as being about dwarves in a bakery making hot cross buns, or a group of various different characters sitting around practicing their cantrips that they can cast all day, all night. If it was all holding hands and kumbaya and wow, we're all just getting together so well, it's just one big family, you would have never heard of Dungeons and Dragons. That's not D&D. And I don't care how much of the art that they try to cram down your throat over at Wizards of the Coast for this new edition. That's not D&D. D&D is not Mexican orcs all standing around doing nothing. That's not D&D. I just, Chris Lundgren says they're in a D&D group that's tearing each other apart over 5th versus 5.5. It's totally insane. Yeah, see, I don't get that. I don't get the whole, oh, the game we love is the best. The game you love is a piece of shit. You suck. I just don't get it. Honestly, I don't think it's worth the effort. Spend the effort on making your game as fun as it possibly can be for you and your friends who play, and who gives a shit about what other people are playing. It's not as if they're coming and banging on your door and telling you, hey, I'm sorry, but from now on, I'm running your game, and this is how it's going to be. Doesn't happen. Purple Bite says it's make-believe. How can anybody be wrong? It's not the point. It's not even just that's wrong. I mean, there's certain things that I wouldn't include in a role-playing game. Just, I wouldn't think it'd be fun, or I don't think it's appropriate, or what have you. So, I mean, I don't have an issue with that, but it's to sit there and tell people that they don't belong in the hobby because the game they're playing at their game table that they've spent their money on doesn't fit what some self-proclaimed all-knowing expert on role-playing games is telling you is not, it's not right. So it's not bad enough that it's not right. It's got to be, you're not welcome in the hobby. It's ridiculous. So Kevin R. Smith's with us. Said, it's not even exclusive to Dungeons and Dragons. I know. White Wolf never released a game called Barista the Underachieving. Richard Harris says, D&D is not a real-life simulator. No, it's not. The whole point of playing role-playing games was to let loose your imagination and go on flights of fantasy that you couldn't in the real world. Agile Monk is with us, popping on in with a super chat. Says, for the record, this former Spec Ops soldier, intelligence operative, and now specialist for the VA and veterans, and 50-plus year tabletop role-playing gamer, I am not the problem with tabletop role-playing games. Said it. Exactly. That's exactly it. The concept of gatekeeping, I don't necessarily understand that either, because it's sort of like, as who just popped in and said, you can't gatekeep. Oh, there you go, Kevin K. The new gatekeepers may be surprised to discover you cannot gatekeep role-playing games. Right. That's something else that I don't get. So back in the day, when some of these people with their butthurt feelings approached people to play Dungeons and Dragons or what have you, I don't know where they would have found them. In school? Really? I don't know. mean, remember, if you played D&D or other role-playing games in the 80s into the 90s, you were kind of a dork. So it wasn't like you were like, hey, everybody, look at me. Look at us. Hey, girls, look at us. We're dorks. But regardless, these folks walked up to a table somewhere and they said, hey, I'd love to play. And somebody said, fuck off. Get out of here. You don't belong in this hobby. Does that mean they couldn't go and buy the game themselves and get their own friends together and play a game? I don't get it. I don't understand that. It's like the store didn't stop you from buying a game. Yeah, well, I went to that hobby shop and I went in there and I got all 3 of those Dungeons and Dragons books. And I went up and I had my hard-earned cash clenched in my fists. Fist, not fists, singular. I've got it in my fists, but how would I carry the books then? I got up to the cashier and I put it down. I said, I'll take these. And they looked me right in the eye and they said, no. It's like, get out of here. Purple Bite says, original D&D is a very different game than today's D&D. I think it's very underhanded for modern players to ride on the reputation of original players. Random Guy says, they're just saying one version is faster than the other, not which version is fastest. That they want to actually eventually give 4th edition a try. Chris Lundgren says, I tend to see more gatekeeping in the miniatures world. Yeah, that I could see. Painted versus unpainted minis. I pissed off a bunch of people when I interviewed Pablo Peralta, who did Dust Tactics, all that stuff. And to this day, I still feel the same way. Miniatures gaming is visual appeal. It's visual pop. It's a tactile hobby. So to play with unpainted miniatures and unpainted terrain and stuff like that, that's the case. I'd just rather play a board game that's got, nice production quality to it, as opposed to just play. And it's not, it's even worse when I would see people playing with primed miniatures. But that's all they would do is primed miniatures. Oh, Kevin King's off on Dad's taxi service. Good to see you. Chris Lundgren points out I'm a mini snob. How dare I? I know I don't belong in that hobby. They've kept me out of it. They won't allow me to purchase miniatures or paint. Yeah. Pretty goofy. So at the end of the day, I think the only problem that we have in the tabletop role-playing game hobby are fucking nitwits trying to tell you what to do in the privacy of your own home with your friends, having a good time your way, and implying or just outright stating that you have no place in this hobby. That's the problem. That's the problem. The problem are these people who have an invested interest in Dungeons and Dragons staying popular and kowtowing to whatever goofy nonsense is the newest thing that has Wizards of the Coast in a spin, and making sure that they're on board with that. So the trickle down to their third-party products, they still sell stuff. I think that is the issue. Gleeman RX asks, so Are we the problem or not? I just told you. I told you what the problem is. It's not the gamers. It's not the players. Like I said, you're entitled to play whatever you want at your game table as long as everybody's fine with it. Nobody has an issue. Nobody's feelings get hurt. Nobody has a mental breakdown because of something that happened at your game table. Then it's fine. It's really no one else's business. And for people to try to ignore things that have been around since we emerged from the primordial goo is asinine. It's just absolutely asinine. Chris Lundgren says they've seen gatekeeping at their local hobby shop. Young man wanted to buy a non-D&D RPG, got lectured by some random guy that he will never get to play his game. I'm sorry, Chris, but people these days need to have a fucking set of balls. So, guy wants to buy a non-D&D RPG and some random dude is lecturing him why not to buy it. I'd be like, dude, fuck off. It's my money. I'm buying what I want. I don't really give a shit what your opinion is. I would probably be far more diplomatic than that. But that's the reality. If you're like, oh, okay, so you're stating an opinion, that's great. Whatever. Agile Monk says, testicular fortitude, sir. Richard Harris says, conform or be cast out. Yeah, but the thing is, so you get cast out of the what? The Dungeons and Dragons world? My God, too bad. That's the only role-playing game around. Too bad it's the only high fantasy role-playing game around. Jeez, what to do next? Verbal Bite says, let's not be too hasty. Maybe there is a place for gatekeeping. Once again, it's your table. If you don't want people at your table, that is your prerogative. Verbal Bite says, let's kick the Magic players out of our hobby. Well, if you kick the Magic players out of the hobby, you're not going to have too many stores out there. Mouth breathing card floppers. Actually, I like Magic. I think Magic is held up very nicely. I don't go out of my way to buy Magic, but yeah, I still like Magic the Gathering. So Verbal Bite says we can do it. But yeah, once again, it's the whole like gatekeeping thing, I think is just so overblown. And once again, like I said, I'm not insinuating that people who wanted to play Dungeons or Dragons or any game and they saw people playing and they asked, hey, can I play? And they were like, nah, get out of here. Yeah, of course. Sure, that stuff happened. But like I said, it wasn't as if the store stopped them from going and buying something. So that whole gatekeeping argument. And once again, I will finish up by saying, back in the 80s, when I was in high school in the early 80s, it wasn't like, wow, this is just a popular hobby. Yeah, we had the Satanic Panic, which reality is didn't really affect the vast majority of us, especially those who lived in like an urban setting, right? Because it'd be like, okay, there's a few stores that actually carry this stuff. But the whole, oh, well, I was kept out of the hobby. Oh, come on, man. You could have gone to the store and bought something. I don't know. It's just weird. And then these same people turn around and they're like, oh, you don't belong in the hobby. There's no place for you in the hobby. It's like, fuck off. But I mean that with love. I mean, I do. I don't have like a beef with these people. It would be like, I saw XYZ on the street and I was like, bam. No, It's a hobby. We're here to have fun. That's the other thing that kind of irritates me. It's like people take this shit way too fucking seriously. It's like, huh, I run a website. I've run the website for going on 15 years. I've been doing videos here on YouTube for 12, 13 years-ish. I don't take this shit as seriously as some of these people out there who just are players. It's just a game. Just a game. It's a make-believe game. All righty. Glewin RX says, I'm going to use that. F you, but I mean that with love. That's the reality, though. I mean, it's not like I don't hate people. I dislike people, and I'll dislike people intensely, but I don't hate anybody. This life is way too short to invest that kind of emotional energy into hating somebody, especially if it's for something goofy like telling people they don't belong in the hobby. It's like, yeah, whatever. See, but then again, I also come from an age where it was like somebody said something mean to you. You're like, whatever. Be like, or you come back with something even better, especially about their mother. Oh, yeah? Well, your mom. Nowadays, it's like, oh, they looked at me strange. I'm going to go climb under the bed. Game Cat says, so you're playing a solo role-playing game, but your own brain brings up problematic themes. How do you cope? I believe you'll have to split your personality. That's about it. Chris Lundgren says Battletech 3025 versus 3050. This is bullshit. Just play the game. Yes, I agree. The Edition Wars stuff is silly too. It's like, just play what you want to play. Play what you enjoy playing. It's like, I remember hearing stories about people ripping on folks who enjoyed 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, whatever, who cares? What does it, how does it affect you? That's why I also don't get about some of these so-called self-proclaimed arbiters of good taste in our hobby. It's kind of like, okay, what kind of effect does it have on you? These people are like, oh, you're playing wrong. You don't belong in this hobby. So them playing wrong, how does that affect you? It fucking doesn't. Outside of, you got to play the right way because then you'll buy my shitty PDF. All righty then. That's it for this time out. So tomorrow we will continue the let's build a fantasy role-playing game together. For those of you who still belong in the hobby, of course. Those of you who aren't welcome in the hobby, you don't need to show up and watch it. And we're going to talk about combat. So we're going to talk about some ideas I've got for combat for the game. Kind of float those out there, see what you think. All righty. If you were watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, thank you kindly, because not only are you keeping me company, you're keeping each other company as I ramble on about various different things. Always jumping all over the place, going off on tangents. Yeah, that's how it is. But of course, I know a lot of you out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy life to watch any of the over 2,100 videos here on the channel. Of course, if you like the video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And of course, if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube. It'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as my review of Sun County, not Sun Country, Sun County, for RuneQuest 3 Classics from our friends over at Chaosium Inc. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Hopefully I see you tomorrow. And as always, I certainly hope all of you, regardless if you belong in this hobby or not, get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.